What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast for episode 41. I'm glad to have you here. My name is Marcus, and I am your host as always. This episode is really cool. We're going to jump into what we're talking about here in just a moment. But first, we've got a little bit of homework that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. We've been talking about the second annual Liquid Trucking Employee Jamboree celebrating 35 years in business. This is Saturday, September 21st, so make sure to mark your calendars for that. And definitely RSVP. That's the important addition to the announcement this week. If you RSVP to the event, you will be entered to win one of over 500 free items. There's $700 worth of gift cards included in this and tons of merch. But again, you're only going to be eligible to win if you RSVP to the event. And when we're talking about stuff to give away here, I'm looking at a picture that Jason posted on LinkedIn right now. There are so many sponsors involved in this, and we got to take a second here to thank them. So think about this. Merch from all of these different sponsors is what's making it into the giveaways, okay? Seneca Tank, Love's Truck Stops, USI Insurance, Craft Tank, Tank Works, Jack Olsta, Isaac, WE Services, Solera, Wabash, and Cottingham and Butler Insurance. So that's just a few of the things that you might be eligible to win. There's also going to be a bunch of other merch in there, some beer koozies and things like that. Drink koozies, let's be honest here. We're not going to call them beer koozies because of the job that we do. You can use it for that while you're at home, obviously, but it's going to keep your soda or your energy drink or your coffee nice and snug if you win one of those koozies or any of the rest of this. I'm seeing some amazing, those insulated tumblers. I'm seeing all sorts of really cool clothes, hats, beanies, t-shirts. The stuff from Love's is awesome, man. I don't know why, but if I had a Love's t-shirt, I would rock it all the time. So remember, Employee Jamboree, second annual, Saturday, September 21st. Mark it on your calendars. But more importantly, if you're going to be there, RSVP to the event. I'm sure that that's come out and they've said, hey, RSVP here. So you've seen it. If you don't RSVP, you're not going to be entered to win some of these great prizes. And there are over 500 of them. So I can't enforce this enough. I told Jason I would hammer this point home. RSVP to the Jamboree if you want to get your hands on some of those fantastic prizes from all of the awesome sponsors. And of course, Driver Appreciation Week working its way into that as well. I happen to know, based on what I've been told by Liquid Management, that it's important to Liquid to always be appreciating the drivers every single day of the year, not just during Driver Appreciation Week. But this year, those two things, the Employee Jamboree and Driver Appreciation Week, marrying up nicely. So get your hands on some of these awesome giveaways from all of our great sponsors. And again, thank you to all of those sponsors we listed earlier in the intro here. Now it's time to get to the meat of today's episode. A few weeks back, we had an episode where we heard from 5 drivers: David Kelly, Larry Pacheco, Mike Stanfield, Nathan Dobrins, and Ryan Stewart. This was our driver feedback episode. I sent out a message to all of you drivers, and I asked anybody that wanted to jump on the podcast for feedback. What do you want to say? What would you like to hear directly from management about? You guys did great with that. Big thanks to David, Larry, Mike, Nathan, and Ryan for coming on that show. Obviously, that might be kind of a daunting task, right? Am I really going to go and put my neck out there with my name attached to it and, give the company some feedback? And these guys did. They were honest, and they gave us some great things to think about. Now, it took a little bit longer to get these responses than what we had hoped. That was due to largely I took a week off to go antelope hunting, and I'll tell you guys all that story in a future episode because we are going to do a hunting episode and talk to some of our hunters out there from Liquid Trucking in the future. But I apologize for this being a little bit delayed, but we're here with it now. Today's episode includes management responses to all 5 drivers' concerns that they brought up on the driver feedback episode. We're going to hear from General Manager Josh Schmidt. We're going to hear from Nick Meyer out there in recruiting and HR. And we'll also talk to VP of HR and Safety, Jason Eisenman, and get answers to all the questions and all the feedback that those drivers provided us a couple weeks ago. So sit back, strap in. It's a good episode. There's a lot of really good information, and I think that you'll enjoy hearing from the powers that be at Liquid about all the things that these drivers were concerned about. So let's kick it off.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Next up here on our responses to the driver feedback, I've got General Manager of Liquid Trucking, Josh Schmidt, on the line. Josh, thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Of course. Welcome. Now, I thought this was a really cool idea that we've been working on here. A lot of companies like to profess that they want to hear feedback from their employees, and they like to kind of grandstand about we listen to employees. But here I've got Liquid Trucking doing it in a very public forum here on the podcast, openly responding to whatever questions the employees have to ask. And before we get into the answers that you're going to give, Josh, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that does for company culture and how special I think it is that you guys are willing to come on and do something like this. You know, we gave the drivers just a blank slate, let them say whatever they wanted to you guys, and now you're here to respond to it. What do you think that does for company culture at Liquid, Josh?
I think it's great. It gives everybody a voice, and we want everybody to feel equally part of our culture, have equal bearing, and everybody feel like they have a voice. And this is fantastic. We know we have our warts, and it's good to go ahead and publicize that and give everybody an idea of what our thoughts are in trying to get it fixed.
Well, again, fantastic idea here. And I think if we can use the podcast for this type of thing, we're using it exactly how I would prefer we do. I just want to make good come out of it, whether it be for the company as a whole or individual employees, whatever the case may be. I've got a little clip here from Liquid driver Mike Stanfield, who replied to us and said that he had some feedback for you. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip here and listen to what Mike has to say.
There is just one thing that I think that the company can improve on. And I know they got a brand new training facility. And what I would like to see now is, somewhere where us drivers can actually go and there's multiple showers, multiple bathrooms. So we're not in the morning times about to piss ourselves and somebody's in there taking a crap and we don't have a bathroom to use. Or afraid to take up the shower because there's only one shower and that's in the same bathroom that we have. So it would be nice to see that expanded to where we can have, multiple showers, multiple bathrooms, maybe a nice lounge room with a TV, a bigger TV, somewhere we can hook our gaming systems up if we want to, maybe a pool table, something like that.
And there you have it from Liquid driver Mike Stanfield. Looking for some driver lounge amenities. What do you got to say in response there, Josh?
Well, first of all, Mike Stanfield's been a great asset to this company, and appreciate him being a spokesman for the rest of our driving fleet. Mike's far from the only one that's mentioned this to us, and I'll be the first to admit that we've really sucked at that. Just being completely honest, as far as giving our drivers a place to hang out when they're there at the yard, and a place to do laundry, a place to, take a shower and get cleaned up. And there's a few reasons why we've sucked at that, I think. First of all, the original buildings over there on the north side are they were built in a different time, so they're just all smaller facilities. It was fine to have the break room over there when we had 30 or 40 drivers. Well, we just haven't had the chance to expand it, and part of the reason is we don't know exactly what to do about it yet, but it has climbed very high on our priority list, and it's probably one of the very next things we've got to get done. One complaint that I get from drivers, I almost wish that we had Mike or some senior drivers on here to talk to, which I'll do. I'll probably give Mike and some of our drivers a call to see how they feel. But one of the issues is big complaint in staying in our yard is the train going by with the whistle. So a lot of guys don't like to stay there anyway for that reason. I don't blame them. I'd love to say, well, wear earplugs. Well, that's not really a great solution. That whistle's going to go right through those earplugs.
Yep.
So do we spend six figures, maybe more than that, on a deluxe driver's lounge right there, and then we'll still have the train problem? Or do we build something over at our new admin building, even if it's just a few more showers, a little more space? The grand solution, I think, is probably going to either expand our truck shop, or we're going to build a new maintenance facility over there on the southeast side of the property near the admin building. And in that case, drivers would be able to be over there where the tractors and trailers are getting serviced, and also be able to chill out and do their laundry, that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of things going on here. I just don't have the best solution right now.
But I think that what you're showing here is that you are working on it, and it is something that has been raised as a concern before, and something that you have listed up, like you said, pretty high on that priority list. Mike, he mentioned a pool table and a nice big TV for gaming. I'm wondering, what else do you have room for out there, Josh? Maybe we could get a par 3 out there, maybe a go-kart track. I mean, how far are we really willing to take this? I think that probably remains up in the air, but all jokes aside, this seems like something that Liquid has been talking about and looking for a solution to for some time now.
Right, and it's a matter of timing. Right now, as drivers know, it's not the best market. We're kind of just treading water here in survival mode, but there'll be much better times ahead, and when those better times happen, we're going to prioritize this as one of our next big projects. We might be able to do it sooner. One of my concerns is the only space we have to do it that's away from the trains is over near the admin building, and our driver is going to want to, bobtail their trucks over there. There's other feedback that we need to get before we do something, I guess is my point. And it's kind of funny you brought up the par 3 or the go-kart track and the pool tables. That's all been brought up before too.
I'm just one of the guys.
We do have a pool table, and we do have TVs, at the admin building, and we do have a little space to put in some showers. It probably wouldn't be, the end game of what we'd want for a driver facility, but it would at least maybe bridge that gap until we get there.
For sure. Well, I think this is a great response to what Mike had to say there, Josh. And before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to say in the vein of a feedback episode? Anything you'd like to tell the drivers before we let you get back to work?
Guys, don't feel bad. Keep the feedback coming. That's what's going to make us a better company is just hearing what you guys' pain points are. It's nice to hear some things that we do well also. So keep it coming. Keep up the good work, and stay safe out there.
That's General Manager of Liquid OFC Schmidt Bartow, Josh Schmidt. Josh, can't thank you enough for coming on here and giving us a response to the driver feedback. We'll definitely do this again sometime in the future, all right?
Sounds great. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Next up here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I am joined by Nick Meyer, Business Development, HR, and Recruiting Specialist from Liquid Trucking. Nick, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you.
Now, we've got some feedback from driver Ryan Stewart that you are here to respond to, and I want to play a little clip of what Ryan had to say real quick.
I recently inquired about trying to do like a specific run, kind of more dedicated. And I'm just wondering, with every other major carrier in the industry right now, would there be any plans for setting up dedicated lanes for drivers to be able to get home more often?
Sure. Now, how often are you getting home as it is right now?
I mean, I do OTR, but the most I qualify is every other week. So I just don't really feel like every other week is really enough home time. I mean, really, I don't feel like home weekly is really enough home time anymore.
So it sounds like to me, Nick, when I listen to that from Ryan, that he's just struggling a little bit, feeling like he's not home enough, and he's looking for some more dedicated routes. So what have you got to say in response to that feedback from Ryan Stewart?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is one of the bad things about being a truck driver. A lot of the money is made away from home, and that is tough. But, in a perfect world, we'd love to be able to be local or semi-local everywhere, but that would also change our pay as well. The longer hauls, we earn a little bit more for the freight, and that's how we're able to pay more. But I totally understand Ryan. He lives in the Quad Cities, and he's got a family, and they're getting older, and that becomes very tough. We happen to be working on some more dedicated work. It is seasonal, just about an hour and a half southwest. We're doing some RFPs for some chemicals there. So that is something that may have some potential for him to help on. But it's tough, man. It's tough on these guys.
I totally agree. In fact, just based on, talking to as many of them as I have, I don't know that there's a tougher job out there in terms of all of the details that you have to pay attention to, how tuned up you have to be to everything going on around you, and dealing with that while thinking about not being around your family each night. I mean, one of the things that keeps me from tearing my hair out on a normal basis is just that at night I get to go home and see my wife, and we can kind of unload, the stresses of the day on one another. And listen, we've got phones and video chat and all that helps, but there's definitely something to being in the same room with that person or those people. It's a tough gig. There's no question about it. But I did have just one kind of follow-up question for you, Nick, in terms of dedicated routes and local stuff. Based on what you guys do at Liquid, obviously we're a tanking company here. We're always hauling liquid. Is there less opportunity for dedicated routes or local stuff just by the nature of what you guys are hauling?
Yeah, well, and it's something that a lot of guys don't understand, but there's more broker opportunities than there are direct customer. And to get on a dedicated lane, it really needs to be direct with the customer. And in this climate right now, the brokerages have really taken over a good chunk of the market. And those brokerages include the brokerages of the JB Hunts. Swift, I'm sure, owns their own brokerage, but they're a different name, but they're owned by these trucking companies. So that's really the market that we're in, is fighting that. So it is more difficult to get new business right now, plus with freight being on the slower side. But, it's trucking. It'll be different a couple years from now, and it'll change again after that. So.
Yeah, we have a thing that we like to say out here in the Pacific Northwest, Nick. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes and it'll change. That's kind of the same thing with trucking as far as the market is concerned in general. It ebbs and flows. There will be good times. There will be bad times. Right now, we're just kind of hanging out at what seems like the bottom of a long downturn, but It's just a matter of time until it turns around. It can't continue to go down forever. There's never going to be a day where you're not earning a single cent for hauling something somewhere. So, fingers crossed, man. Do you have any predictions, or are you a betting man? Would you like to go out on a limb and give us maybe a prediction based on what you've seen of the market? Is there a turnaround in sight, or are we going to be out for another maybe year or two looking at conditions like this?
Based off of historical data, we should have a good next couple years, but I don't think it's going to start to turn until, the first or second quarter of next year. But just each election, we have a couple up years, and then it slowly goes down until there's another election for people to throw money in the market.
Yep, exactly. Well, Nick, this has been so cool just getting to talk to you guys and get your feedback from the management side of things. I know that the drivers are really looking forward to your responses. I've had a lot of drivers already reach out to me and tell me that they really enjoyed hearing the feedback in part one of this kind of separated two-part episode here. So can't thank you enough for coming on here. And just, if you have any thoughts that you want to share real quick before I let you go about why we're doing this, why we're having management respond directly to drivers and what it can do for the culture, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just thankful that these guys were willing to go on and talk about it. And what we're really trying to accomplish is to have our guys not be afraid to call us, to call their dispatcher, to stop in and see us and talk about some things. So particularly like Ryan Stewart, I went and talked with the dispatchers and load planners, and we're going to look at some ways to try to help. We won't know if we're never talked to about it. So I love this. This is great.
Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, if I can say that. It's a very, very appropriate for the trucking industry and a trucking podcast. Well, there you have it from business development, HR, and recruiting specialist Nick Meyer. Great response there, and I hope that things can turn around for Ryan sometime here in the future. We appreciate the time, Nick, and we'll get you back on here soon, okay?
All right, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Joining us next here to give some responses to our driver feedback is a man that is instrumental in this podcast going as it does. I've called him the co-host on here before because he joins us a lot, and we're happy to welcome back Jason Eisenman, VP of HR and Safety for Liquid Trucking. Jason, good to have you here, man. Welcome back.
As always, glad to be back and talk about some really age-old things in trucking dating back to even when I started driving in 1999. Some of these things that they're sharing feedback on resonate through all the years. So excited to talk about them.
Yeah, I talked to Josh a little bit about this when he was on, and I think it's really cool that you guys are even willing to have these conversations in this format, just to, be wide open and let drivers come with anything they want, and you'll respond to it, is not something that you find very often amongst companies. That might be something that happens behind closed doors, but in a public forum like this for anybody to listen to, it's pretty rare. And just, as a fly on the wall, because that's kind of what I am here, I think it's a really cool thing for the employees to get a chance to have their questions answered by you. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We've got a clip here from Larry Pacheco, Liquid driver, who called up, and he wanted to talk a little bit about tri-packs. Let's take a listen.
One of the biggest things that I've come to notice that I really wish Liquid would do, and I know I've mentioned it to somebody before, would be they have this idle program, that if you're idling too much, they want to sort of penalize you for it. I understand that because you're wasting fuel. I wish that they would bring tri-packs to the trucks. You don't want us to idle, give us a way to keep cool or hot. That's one of my biggest deals. I mean, it's nice to have refrigerators, stuff like that. A tri-pack is going to save your wear and tear on your engine. It's It's also going to save wear and tear on your employees.
So basically, if you're not idling right now as it sits, you can't have your air conditioner or your heater on. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct.
And I imagine that gets pretty uncomfortable this time of year, especially, out there in the Midwest. You guys got that sweltering heat down in the South. So you've been sweating out there a little bit, Larry?
Oh, God, yes. Even like where I'm at right now, it is 97 degrees, and you're not allowed to have the truck on.
So there's our feedback from Larry Pacheco. I know this kind of blends into another clip that we're going to play here in a minute, Jason, but anything you've got to say right now, go ahead.
No, I think that's a good start. Larry talks about the idling and then the tri-pack. And if we play the next clip, I think we can get two of the guys kind of wrapped into one idle discussion and then break out the tri-pack versus opti-idle and some of the history on that as well.
Okay, cool. So we're going to jump into the feedback from Nathan Dobrins. And again, Larry just had the one thing he wanted to talk about. We're going to touch on that here after we hear from Nathan Dobrins, Liquid Driver.
Some of the bad was not bad, as it's more of just minor things, adjusting to it. One thing I noticed, having planners and dispatchers might have a little bit of disconnect, because I've noticed previous times I've been to, the dispatcher was the end-all be-all. They were the one that booked it. They did the Raycon. They did all that. So if you had to have a question, the dispatcher would be able to pull off everything. Like, oh, here's their phone number, here's their hours, everything. With the planners doing it, it's kind of hard. Like, I get each dispatcher has like 30, 40 drivers each, so they don't have that personal ability. But I do think maybe having the drivers have more access to the planners themselves instead of just going to their dispatcher might help a little bit if there's more in-depth questions about load. I know the Qualcomm, normally when they send a load, I have all the information I need, but sometimes there's a phone number missing or the times on it for business hours are wrong. There's some clarification on it. I mean, for the most part, my dispatcher, I don't want to name drop it, so I would figure it out. But they're good. They're pretty, end of the day, they say, here's your plan for tomorrow, here's the times, here's where you're going. But sometimes on the weekend, he'll say, hey, load early here. And I'm like, well, what's early? 2 a.m., 5 a.m.? Like, just give me the time, location, address, phone numbers, and I'm good to go. I can figure it out from there. Another one, it's kind of a minor thing. Like, this is my first hourly truck driving job. The one thing I've heard was that we don't get paid for pre-trips and fuel. The fueling I can understand, that's usually a 10-minute deal, and usually I squeeze in a 30-minute break on that anyway, so I'm not worried about that. But not getting paid for the pre-trip, a proper pre-trip on a tank takes 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. If you're actually doing all the points on it. That's all I had on that one. The last big one is the only one that kind of bugs me. So I was talking to one of our persons in HR, and they said that using opti-idle counts against your idle bonus, like the truck turns on its own when it needs to. I feel like it's kind of counterproductive to use it, because if you're still going to get punished for idling the truck, if the truck decides it needs to idle, it seems kind of a moot point to use it, especially, summer, winter, it's going to be hard not to idle the truck when it gets 90 degrees or 30 degrees in the truck. Mm-hmm. But I don't know I think some of the trucks here have an APU. I'm not sure. I haven't walked every single tractor in the company to know if they have APUs or not. And I think the idle bonus is not a huge chunk of the bonuses we get. So that's the only thing that kind of hurts me. Is like, well, what's the point of even having the opt-idle if we're still going to get punished for using it?
So right there at the end of that clip, Jason, is kind of what you were talking about, where Nathan's and Larry's feedback kind of marries up a little bit. So let's start there and talk to me about the opti-idle, tri-packs, all that.
Yeah, let's start with like a decade-old idle bonus. Now, I feel like the value in this is because the drivers have crafted this bonus from feedback in prior years, dating back to like 2013, 2014, 2015. So the idle bonus is designed to be just that, a bonus. We don't ever want to take away from your base wages. We want to offer a bonus when you can perform better than expected, right? And save the company some money. And that's not always possible, because we live in the Midwest and they operate all over the country, hot, cold, and different plants, everything, mountains to low valleys. So the drivers are in all kinds of environments and temperature settings, etc. So it's an impossible bonus to get right. We still haven't gotten it right, but we have tried to listen. So given some of that old history there, the idle bonus used to be called the mile per gallon bonus. And that was incentivized by the mile per gallon that you got on the truck. And we talked to the fleet in those older years, and they didn't like it because to get that, they had to drive slower to get a better mile per gallon. So that took away from their ability to move a little quicker. We're not talking about speeding, but they felt like they had to drive 55 or something all the time to achieve a good bonus. So we took that bonus away and replaced the money with something else. And then they wanted the bonus to come back. Because naturally, anytime you take away something, it feels like you're losing something, even if you put the money in another part of the pay plan. So then we brought it back as the idle bonus. And to just give like a description of the idle bonus to make sure everyone understands how it works, it's a nickel for every percent that you idle the truck under 40%. So the way it reads in the pay plan to help with that is drivers are paid 5 cents per driving hour for limiting the idling of your truck. The 5% for each 1% under 40% of total idle time. For example, if your truck is running 100 hours per week with 60 of those hours spent driving and 40 hours spent idling, you have 40% idle time. So anytime your truck idle goes below 40% at the end of the quarter, it's a nickel per percent, and max is at 20%, which 20 times 5 is $1. So it's a max extra $1 on all their drive hours. Now, if you have questions on that first, Marcus, let's hear it from you. That way, in case drivers have questions, you might have the same question.
Well, the way I'm kind of quantifying it here is I'm just taking a real simple math because, Jason, I'll be honest with you, when I'm dealing with math, it's always going to be the simplest way possible. But I'm hearing you say that if I was coming in at 35% idle time and 65% drive time, that I would be earning an extra 25 cents per drive mile. Is that correct?
Yes, a nickel.
Or per drive hour, excuse me. A nickel per percent, so that would be 5%, 5 nickels. We're getting a quarter extra per hour there.
That you drive, yep.
That you drive. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I've got it. I hope I didn't confuse anybody with my simple math there, but I think I'm on the same page. So,
and we recognize like that it is not perfect. We hear the feedback. We don't know quite what to do. We are planning, discussions down the road. And that obviously every 2 or 3 years we look at, opportunities when markets are good to provide the fleet with raises, and we take those opportunities to use this feedback to maybe craft different bonus metrics. But it's a tough one because in trucking, fueling, it's volatile, the price, and all the things that they have to encounter out there, whether it's sleeping in the truck, driving, idling, customer plants, etc. The deck is stacked against them. So that's some of the history on it, and I hope that helps. And again, we appreciate the feedback, and we hope to get it closer to right for everyone, maybe on the next go around, as it's got a couple parts of the history already in it.
Sure. And it sounds to me like, based on what's gone on in the past, you guys have been very open to listening to how drivers think that this could be improved. So I would encourage drivers to communicate if they're listening to this right now and you say, hey, I'd like to get my 2 cents in on that. Where can they go, Jason, to send some comments? Do you want them contacting their dispatcher? Do you want them to get in touch with you and HR? Where should they go if they have some thoughts on how maybe this could be improved the next time around?
Yeah, all those, or just simply, send us an email. Use the podcast at liquidtrucking.com and just say you listen to this episode and you had some thoughts on the topic, and we enjoy reading them for sure, because it's better to know what folks are thinking versus opposed to just thinking everything's okay.
Absolutely. And trying to guess what every driver in the fleet wants is not the way to go. Knowing what they want's the best way to go, and operating with that info. So get in touch, send an email, like Jason said, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, if you have some thoughts to add on that. So that kind of covers the OptiIdle usage there.
Well,
Do you have a couple more things there? Sorry.
well, no, that's all right. I just wanted to take that and dovetail right into the OptiIdle versus the tri-pack. So I did, not being a shop guy, having been a driver but not a shop management person, I sat down with Gabe Schmidt and we talked about the history of that and to give some feedback on that concern. And I think that was just one of the guys, or there might have been a couple there, but it's also one of those long time topics. So the fleet used to be mainly tri-packs. And so some of Gabe's feedback is think of it as having a second small diesel engine on the truck. And what they used to experience is tons of downtime, back ordered of parts. So basically they were maintaining a second engine on the truck in the tri-pack unit. I don't know if the technology or the reliableness at the time wasn't maybe where it is today, but that's when Gabe and Josh, as owners, decided to move away from that because the drivers' complaints at the time were they were constantly frustrated with having to switch into spare trucks or not having OptiIdle on the truck and their tri-pack not even working, parts not being available, or the truck having to be in the shop for too long to get it fixed. So it sounds like there were issues around the tri-pack for our fleet that drove the company to focus more on the OptiIdle in the truck part. And again, Gabe's feedback was, hey, we don't want you out there sweating to death, freezing to death. We want you to run the truck when needed. Idle the truck as needed. Remember, it's just a bonus. It's not meant to take away from anyone's quality of life or paycheck. And we know that the job's going to give you bumps in the road where you can't always max out every bonus. But the they have thought a lot about it, and some of the way that the fleet's shaped right now is because of some of that feedback at the time about tri-packs and all the maintenance issues and spare trucks that I mentioned. So hopefully that feedback helps from Gabe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's important too, as always, we're always thinking about the safety aspect of everything that we talk about on this podcast. And with these temperatures, I mean, just again this week, we're back into the triple digits over here on the West Coast. And it is September when we're recording this. And that means that other places, the Midwest, the South, the Eastern Seaboard, are all going to be really sweltering hot here for maybe a week or so. But you have to think about the safety aspect of keeping yourself cool enough so that you're not just completely worn down when you finally do get out of your truck to load or unload. You got to stay hydrated. You got to think about all that stuff. And those bumps in the road that you talk about, it's a tough job, right? We've talked about it before. Somebody mentioned APUs. I believe that was Nathan that talked about APUs. Can you talk to me a little bit about APUs versus tri-packs? Are those the same thing? Are they similar?
Yep.
Similar things. Okay. I'm still catching up with the vocab here every now and then, Jason. So forgive me for
right.
that.
Nope, that's all right at all. I had some notes on Nathan with the planners and dispatchers. Do you think that's a good time to talk about that?
Absolutely. Nathan was concerned that maybe having a little bit more access to the load planners would help out. Maybe there was a bit of a disconnect there. So what do you have for me on that?
Yes, I went and talked with our planners and a couple dispatchers and to give kind of to start with like a broader flow of things. We have an order entry team that they don't generally work with the drivers, but that's where the life of a load starts. Customer sends, and we call this like the top down, whether it's the broker or the shipper, somebody is generating the load. We're taking it from somebody that goes to order entry, and they provide us and our drivers with all the information that we need to follow to get that load done. Now that information is not always accurate. We know that. It's a lifelong battle in trucking. So the drivers end up paying the ultimate price when that information's wrong. But when you do 660 loads a week on average, it's pretty tough to make sure all data is correct, but they try their hardest. So it goes from order entry, the load, to the planners, and the planners, being only there's 3 in Plattsmouth and then 1 in Sioux City at the Bardo terminal. Those planners have to look at all the schedules of the drivers and the dispatch software. They're also working on the back hauls. They also kind of serve as account managers, so they're doing a lot of customer service, directly communicating with customers. So their time is ate up in a big portion by just trying to keep the trucks busy and full with back hauls and doing all sorts of that type of work. And then the dispatchers, they watch the same load board and they work closely with the load planners. Don't get me wrong, because drivers have all kinds of requirements, for home and life, and trying to be as flexible with everybody schedules and needs as possible. It's quite the orchestra to put together every week. The feedback doesn't come as a shock because they get just as frustrated when information's wrong. It makes their job harder, and then it makes tensions tight with the dispatcher and the driver, because the driver's the one out there trying to get the load picked up or delivered or scaled or whatever the case may be, and they're the ones eating all the frustration because they need this or they need that, and dispatcher's on the phone with so and so to get them the number. And not to make just a million excuses, it's definitely a daily battle. I don't know that we'll ever win it, but one of the ways I wanted to mention to Nathan that we're trying to win it is through the use of DR, what we call deliver recon. He talked a lot about phone numbers might be wrong and things. So deliver recon is for the drivers to look up those stops and see information left by other drivers, because deliver recon is not fed by our dispatchers or load planners or customers. It's all fed by driver peer-to-peer data. So you can always pick up the coolest and latest driver tips through DR that will cut down on some of that, but not all of it, of course.
Sure.
I'll take a break there.
Yeah, we've talked about Deliver Recon before a few different times on the show, and to me it sounds like the best thing that drivers can do to help themselves here with this particular issue is to use that Deliver Recon app more. Just always be dumping as much information into it as you can. It might not help you the next time, but it will help a driver. So it's kind of like helping someone else to help yourself, if you would. If everybody kind of dumps as much information as they can on the customers into Deliver Recon, it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all ships scenario.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. It's really a circle of life thing for sure. Team effort.
There you go. Well, we're all about the team effort here at Liquid Trucking. That's why we're doing this podcast to begin with. So help us help you, and pour as much info as you can into that Deliver Recon app. I have had drivers tell me before, hey, I didn't know something that I needed to know, and it was in the app. I know that's not always the case, but we can make it the case if we continue working towards that goal with each and every delivery. So,
absolutely. I got one more thing on Nathan. He left some good feedback on the shops, and I took that feedback. Yeah, Nathan mentioned, talking about his visor and various things getting fixed quickly. Alex, Casey, Gabe, Bo, they were all appreciative of the feedback and just wanted to pass on a big thanks for the compliments, because it's always good to get the positive feedback. Most of the time we always hear about the bad, and everybody likes to hear a little good, so they were thankful for that.
Yeah, and it should be noted, you didn't hear that in the clip that we just played for Nathan. Just in the interest of time, we were trying to get it down to kind of 3 basic things there, but said some really cool things about being blown away by how fast the shop was able to react. And even in one point in time, didn't have the truck pulled in the right area because the shop was so fast, he wasn't even ready for it yet at that point in time. Stellar feedback, and hats off to the shop. It's been 2 weeks now in a row where we've given the shop a ton of accolades on this show And you guys deserve it. I feel like they're the unsung heroes here. They're always busy, so we don't get a lot of time to talk to them on the podcast, but know that we're very aware that this ship doesn't run without them, and they are very efficient and very good at what they do in both the truck and trailer shop. So important that we do mention that type of stuff because, as I said, they're kind of like the offensive linemen. We don't get any yards, we don't score any touchdowns without these guys. But you're not always going to hear them in the interviews. It is really kind of a nice way to relate it to football season here.
Yeah, for sure. We talked a lot about Larry and Nathan's feedback. Have we played the David Kelly clip yet?
We have not played David Kelly. Let's go ahead and hear from him.
The one thing I would say is like for short haul operations and like regional operations close to like the Omaha, Nebraska terminal, they set their ETAs really well. But when you start getting further out, like 2,000, like my trip currently is a 2,100 mile trip.
Wow.
It's like the ETA was it felt kind of rushed on this trip, and I've already talked to some people in the company, and it's getting handled and all that stuff. Because I can't go from Illinois to LA in like 3 days. Like that's physically impossible.
Right.
And also LA traffic's something else.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that a lot on this podcast. Nobody, even the people that are from LA that have been on the podcast are like, man, just stay out of LA. So yeah, I would totally get that. So obviously you don't want to get out there and get like a speeding violation or anything else trying to get there on time.
Oh yeah, because once you cross in California, it's 55 in the whole state. That's a big state.
Yeah, it is.
I maybe do 56, and that's going downhill. But for the most part, I say 55 because California Highway Patrol, they're really stickler on truck speed. Meanwhile, there's cars passing doing 95 miles an hour.
Right. If there was one fix that you could suggest for the ETAs and kind of solving this problem for you, what would it be?
Google Maps is actually a really good tool, like in the more recent years, because it gives traffic data, and you can actually go inside Google Maps, look up the historic traffic data, work zones, all that stuff. And I'm looking at mileage. It's like, okay, this trip is 2,100 miles. That should take, if you do 600 miles a day, like 3-4 days to do that. Yeah, in a perfect world scenario. And also, this nation is not flat. But on I-40, once you get past Amarillo and get towards like Albuquerque and Arizona, it's all mountainous. I'm grossing out right now about 78,000 pounds, and it's liquid, so it doesn't stop moving.
Right.
So just looking at the cities, like asking the driver what their pre-planned route is, like on mine, I took 70 over to St. Louis, 44 down to Oklahoma City, and then 140 over to LA. It's like for me, I've passed through St. Louis, Oklahoma City, Amarillo, Albuquerque, and then my next major city I'm going to be going through is LA and all that stuff. So taking into account, okay, if I'm going to LA, add on a couple hours onto that ETA time. Another big thing is road work, because this time of year is road work season.
So to kind of sum that up, it sounds to me, Jason, like what David is looking for is maybe just a little bit of slush time when he's on a route like that, where he's going through so many metropolitan areas and, coming out of the flat part of the country in the Great Plains and Midwest into our Rocky Mountains and Cascade Mountains over here on the West Coast. So take it away. What have you got for me?
Yeah. David, he's newer to the company, and in the full interview, you mentioned how long he'd been with the company, and wanted to thank him for picking us. He had a lot of good words, good compliments in the full interview. If you didn't catch that episode, definitely should. Some of that, goes back to what we were just talking about, and the order entry, load planner, dispatcher roles, that information we're given from the top down. And, the overall natural human desire, because as a trucking company, all we sell is service, right? And you could go hire any other trucking company and they'll have trucks and trailers just like we do. But it's us, the people, the drivers, it's our service that make a difference, and it makes them pick us. With that said, the dispatchers, they want you to be safe, but they also want to please the customer and be on time. So with David being newer to the company and talking with the guys in dispatch, they really just want, if they put a load out there, it's highly automated due to the high load count per week, for a company our size. and the software that they use. So they rely on some of that feedback from the driver. If they get a load dispatch to them and that driver does the trip plan and looks it all over, and the delivery date and time doesn't look feasible with things that the driver knows that the dispatcher might not, they just want them, to call them, communicate back to them and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. This is my trip plan. I'm probably going to be this date and time. Is that going to be okay on the delivery end? And then the dispatcher goes and works with the customer, broker, whoever, is in that go between who give us the load and work that out for them. So yeah, we don't want you to speed. We want you to be safe. It's kind of the overall natural desire, like I said, to try and service every customer on time. So instead, the dispatchers don't want to assume and just push out things that the drivers don't, that without talking or hearing from the drivers that they won't be able to get this done. So don't be afraid, in short, to talk with your dispatcher anytime you get a load. Complete that trip plan in your head, map it out, and be like, man, I'm going to need a couple more hours, or the next morning or something. Well, we're looking for that feedback, and definitely don't feel like you can't call your dispatcher and talk about that.
Yeah, and this would make sense having, as you mentioned, David's only been with the company for a couple of months, and maybe he just, hasn't quite gotten comfortable yet, given that feedback. Maybe he's a little bit more apt to look at that and say, I'm going to try to do it, be as safe as I possibly can, but I'm going to try to fall within that. But what I'm hearing you say is it's okay to call your dispatcher and try to get that adjusted a little bit, because at the end of the day, we need drivers home safe. We need the loads to get where they're going. And if you're constantly getting pulled over because you're speeding, or you're trying to take shortcuts and it's running you off route, none of that stuff's going to add up to getting that load to the customer when they need it either. So definitely communicate. And I think, Jason, kind of an overarching theme of our entire talk here has been about communication, because when we talked about TriPax and OptiIdle, it was about feedback. Like, let's hear what you have to say, and this way we can maybe tweak this program so it works a little bit better. When we talk about dispatch versus load planning, it's also a thing about communicating with the Deliver Recon app and dumping as much info as we can into that. And then here with David's feedback, we talk about ETAs. If the dispatcher doesn't know that you're something that you do, you got to let them know. And then that way everybody can do their job more effectively and kind of adjust to what you're seeing out there. So communication, as always, paramount in everything we do here at Liquid Trucking.
Yeah. And, to be fair, we're not always perfect at it. We're all humans. We're going to let you down sometimes. We're trying not to. We're trying pretty darn hard. We talk about communication a lot. We have an old adage, people have always heard the term cash is king, but the reality is communication can trump that. It can be the real cash in life in so many ways, personal and business. So a lot of good stuff, some of these topics are way back in the day, real old. Like, I just don't know how we're ever going to win all of these topics, but certainly enjoy the feedback and finding ways that we could possibly offer, a better experience for everybody by listening.
Sure. And, what a great way to use this podcast. I communicate for a living. And so the reason you're going to always hear me talk about the importance of communication is because without it, I would not have a job. So let's continue to use the podcast for purposes like this. Obviously, we've got a lot of happy drivers out there. It's not all bad. There's going to be some good feedback too. We want to hear it all here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. And Jason, I just can't thank you enough for coming on and tackling all of this. It was a lot here to go through 3 different drivers and the things that they wanted to see addressed. And I think we've done a good job kind of going point by point and working our way through it. But before I run you out of here, I want to make sure there's nothing else that you have left to say, and we have actually gotten all the way through.
Nope. I think that it's been great. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody that can make it to the Jamboree. I know you'll have some additional info for that you might have already heard on the bumpers or the outros. But additionally, one other key thing for everybody in Deliver Recon, in the driver toolbox section, there's a driver feedback part of the app that is always there for you to use. You mentioned, how to get in touch with us. Well, you can always stop in, call, email the show, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or open up your Deliver Recon app, navigate to the driver toolbox, and inside there, you'll find a driver feedback button where you can leave anonymous feedback. It's just a simple web form. You can put your name on it. You can put your truck number on it. You can put all your thoughts in there. You could leave your name off, leave your truck number off, and leave your thoughts as well. So that's always there. It's been there for a long time. Feel free to always go use that if you want to leave some anonymous feedback at any point during the week.
Perfect. Well, it's all geared at listening to what drivers have to say, and we appreciate everybody that's taken part in this podcast. Of course, all of our drivers that we heard from today, Nathan, David, and Larry, we really appreciate you guys being willing to come on here and share your thoughts. And I can see this being something that we do more in the future, Jason, and maybe we'll tweak the format a little bit, but really cool having you on here to answer these drivers. And we appreciate it. And I'm just going to leave you with one thing that's going to kind of tease what we're going to get into a little bit next week. But go Ducks, Jason. It is college football season, and you and I haven't been on here together since that kicked off. So I'm ready for some Big Ten action. You guys out there in Nebraska are feeling good about your team. I know that. So next week, we're going to dive into that a little bit.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
All right. That's Jason Eisenman, VP of HR and Safety for Liquid Trucking. We'll be right back. You know, it's not every day you come across a company that will not only listen to feedback from its employees, but actually try to take some action and fix some of the things that employees think would make their quality of life a little bit better at work. And that's what we just did here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Great responses from Josh Schmidt, Nick Meyer, and Jason Eisenman. Want to thank those guys for taking some time out of their day to address these concerns. And of course, going back to it, I want to thank David Kelly, Larry Pacheco, Mike Stanfield, Nathan Dobrins, and Ryan Stewart for their awesome feedback. I hope that we can just build on this. You know, a lot like what Jason was talking about there, where we're talking about some policies and some bonuses that have been in the works and evolving for well over a decade. This format will also evolve. We're going to figure out a way to do this driver feedback episode where we won't end up with any delays, regardless if I take a vacation and go hunt like axis deer in Hawaii or something like that. Maybe make it so that it kind of all is a roundtable discussion. I don't know yet. We're still kicking that idea around. If you have feedback on the way you think this should go down, we would love to hear it. That feedback and anything else that you have, send it over to podcast@liquidtrucking.com, and we will definitely take a listen to everything that you have to say. And for you drivers that just send me a text message, feel free to do that too. A lot of you guys have my number. I've handed out a lot of business cards, and if you don't have my number but you want it, you can either get it from the guys in your dispatch. You know, I know that Tanner, Cole, those guys have my number. Jason's got my number. I'm more than happy to have any one of you drivers out there driving a liquid truck, having my cell phone number and being able to just text me if something comes to your mind. We've gotten a lot of cool ideas for the podcast just by getting text messages from drivers at random times. Hey, I thought this would be cool. In fact, next week, we're going to act on one of those. We're going to talk some college football, and really excited about that episode. But there is one thing, of course, before we get out of here, I've got to remind you about, and that is the Employee Jamboree happening Saturday, September 21st. We talked about it in the intro. I'm going to thank the sponsors here again: Seneca Tank, Love's Truck Stop, USI Insurance, Kraft Tank, Tank Works, Jack Olsta, Isaac, WE Services, Solera, Wabash, Cottingham and Butler Insurance. They've all given a ton of merch, over 500 items to Liquid Trucking to give away at the Employee Jamboree. And the only thing that you have to do to be eligible for those giveaways is RSVP to the event. So make sure and get on top of that. Mark your calendars. Make sure the family's ready to come out and have some food and some fun and maybe go home with a bunch of prizes under your arm. Now, I don't want to undersell the lead here. There's over $700 worth of gift cards included in this merch giveaway in our 500 items that we have to give away. So everybody has a chance to get their hands on something. You just have to RSVP to the event. So be sure to do that. Again, the Employee Jamboree going down Saturday, September 21st at the Plattsmouth Terminal. Thank you to Josh, Nick, and Jason once again. And one more big thanks to my drivers, David, Larry, Mike, and Nathan, and Ryan. You guys made this happen for us today. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be back with another driver feedback episode in the future. For now, stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up, and we'll see you next week. It's the Liquid Trucking Podcast, and I'm out of here.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.